welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and today I have a featured finished project for you. The way I like to do these videos is I try to keep them 30 minutes or less. I go through the pattern specifications, information that is given by the designer prior to purchasing the pattern if it is a paid for pattern. And then I go through my modifications, or I guess any modifications that I may have made, my process, choosing the yarn, the colors, things like that. And then at the end, I go through styling options. I'm usually recording these videos shortly after I have finished the project. So oftentimes I'm seeing these outfits for the first time as I'm sharing them with you. I will link to makers, designers, yarns, things like that in the description box below this video. And I do use Ravelry for my knit and crocheted projects. So you will find links to projects in the description box below as well to Ravelry. I include closed captioning on all of my videos here on YouTube. You'll click on that CC button. And if I speak faster or slower than your preferences, YouTube allows you to adjust the speed. I do include visuals on the screen, so I'm letting you know that in case you're doing other things while you are watching or listening. It is to correct things that I have said incorrectly, and sometimes it's just to provide additional visual aid. Today we are talking about the Nantucket Sweater by Haley Smedley of Ozetta. The Nantucket Sweater is a top-down sweater that's meant to be oversized, worn with 10 inches of positive ease. There is this curved shoulder shaping, and there are no short rows. So all of the shaping is done with increases, and I really like that because it gives a very tidy stitch definition, and you don't have any of the wonky gaping of the stitches that you might have with short rows. The pattern is designed for 2 colors, and so there is striping throughout. The shaping lends itself to a lot of visual interest for the different directions that the stripes go. Of course, you could knit the whole thing in one color if you want, but then you lose that visual interest of the stripes going in different directions. The sizes come in XS to 5XL, and that corresponds to a finished circumference of 40 inches to 70 inches, or 101 centimeters to 177 centimeters. You're also given the length of the garment, and so if you choose to make it longer, you may need more yarn. The gauge is 20 stitches by 28 rows in 4 by 4 inches of stockinette, and that is worked on the larger needles. The needles recommended are a 4.5 millimeter, which is a US 7, and that's for the main fabric, and then a 4 millimeter or US 6 for all of the ribbing. Of course, use whatever needle size is going to get you the pattern gauge. Something interesting about the materials in this pattern is that you aren't given specific yardages for each size. The original pattern is written for Barocco Ultra Alpaca yarn, and that comes in 219 yards for 100 grams. And for each size, it basically just gives you the number of hanks that are approximated for each size. So for the first 3 sizes, it says 300 grams of Barocco Ultra Alpaca for the main color and 300 grams for the contrast color. So you would buy 6 hanks total for 600 grams. But it says that for the first 3 sizes. And then for the next 3 sizes, it's 400 grams of each color. And then for the next 3 sizes, it's 500 grams of each color. So if you were going to not purchase additional yarn and use yarn you already had, you don't really have a good estimate of how much yarn you need for whichever size you're picking. And that makes it a little bit tricky, but just a heads up, if that works fine for you, that's great. If that doesn't work fine for you, well, now you know. Techniques included in this pattern are knitting flat, knitting in the round, long tail cast on, backward loop cast on, increasing, decreasing, holding stitches, picking up stitches, Italian bind off, and wet blocking. A schematic is included in the pattern after you purchase it, which is useful because then if you tend to prefer longer sleeve lengths, then you know you might need more yarn or a longer body length. I think the body length written in the pattern is high hip or slightly cropped, but of course that can vary depending on your body type, your height, your preferences, things like that. I don't believe the schematic is included prior to purchasing the pattern, so that's something that you won't be able to access until you buy the pattern. The designer does list their height, so when you are looking at their sample photos, it gives at least for me, a better idea of how the fit is intended to be. So I think I am 3 inches taller than the designer, so I tend to lengthen the sleeves and sometimes lengthen the body when I'm picking a certain size. So I might pick the same size, but because I'm taller and my arms are longer, I need to account for yardage to lengthen the sleeves and lengthen the body if that's something that I choose to do. So I mentioned the garment is constructed top down. I believe you start with the front top section and then you put those stitches on hold and then you pick up to knit the back top section and then you'll join in the round and knit the rest of it in the round and then you'll pick up to knit the sleeves. It is a tapered sleeve and then you finish off with the cuff ribbing and then you'll go back and pick up to knit a folded over neckband and that's all in ribbing as well. I think that is everything to mention about the construction and the pattern specifications, and then we'll go on to my process and modifications that I made. The original pattern is written for 2 colors. If you've been here for some time on this channel, then you will know that I love to play with color. I'm often inspired by a certain mood or energy or feeling that I want to portray in my project. And for this one, I was seeking a perfect coastal summer sweater. So that influenced my color choices and my yarn choice. The yarn that I used for this pattern is Pearl Soho's Plein Air base. This yarn is 67% wool and 30% organically grown cotton. It comes in 218 yards for 100 grams in a hank form, so you do have to wind it. It is a hand wash, cold lay flat to dry yarn, and this yarn was provided to me as yarn support for this project. I picked several colors. My main color is Seaside Blue, this beautiful sky blue, aptly named for the coastal summer sweater that I was going for. And then we have this very pale green called Leek Green. And then I have Heirloom White, which is a natural cream color, not too yellow. And then I added in Powder Blue, a very pale blue. And then I decided to add in a couple of stripes in the sleeves that are just different on both sleeves. So I have Dungaree's Blue, which is a darker royal blue. And then I don't have the other color here, but that is Pink Salt, and it's a very pale peachy pink. Those 2 yarns were remaining from previous projects. So the dark blue, I think I've knit it in 2 other projects already. And then this pale peachy pink is taken from another project that I'll talk about maybe in a couple of weeks. I love how this color combination turned out. It has subtle low contrast stripes that provide additional interest in the knitting process, but also in visual interest in the final result. And it's fun and playful, and it really all goes together. And then these little bit of contrasting stripes in the sleeves just add to the playfulness, and I love it. The collar, I did do a contrasting neckband with the powder blue on the inside. So instead of knitting the same color all the way throughout, when I'm a little bit under halfway, I join the contrast color so that some of it peeks out over the side, and then I fold it down so that you can see a couple of rounds from the right side. The body, I did 6 stripes in the Leek Green, 3 stripes in the Heirloom White, and repeated that twice. And in the sleeves, I alternated the powder blue with the Seaside Blue and then added the little bits of contrasting stripes. I did knit my sleeves longer, and so I modified the decrease rate to be slightly more frequent, and I just did it in the same part of the stripe sequence all the way down, so it was just easier to remember. That is different from the pattern. The pattern sequence, I believe, is always after a certain number of rounds, but it wasn't necessarily in pattern with the stripes. And so I knew I was going to knit mine 2 or 3 inches longer, so then I just changed the decrease rate added more stripes. So then the end result is similar to designers where the sleeve length goes to the wrist and it still has a wide cuff, however, not as wide as the one in the pattern. I wanted it just a little less wide. So I ended up with less stitches at the end compared to what the designer had, but it worked out. I think I ended up with 8 less stitches at the end than the designers. I also know that because of my yarn choice, that the cotton will keep it from being as elastic, and so it might stretch out at some point, and I would rather it not grow extensively into a super wide cuff. So it worked out for me to have a few more decrease rounds as I continued on to my longer sleeve length. I did cast on the smallest size, so that would finish at 40 inches. The pattern recommends 10 inches of positive ease. And although I probably could have just stuck with that first size, giving me 8 inches of positive ease, I added a couple of stitches in the underarm on both sides when I was joining the front and back together to then end up with a body circumference that has 10 inches of positive ease. I think I did well with that decision because I didn't want the top part necessarily to have a lot of extra fabric because it's already oversized. But for the body section, I don't mind that having more ease. As a summer sweater, it's going to be thrown on over things like tank tops and t-shirts, and I like the loose and airy fit. There's a little more airflow, more breathability. I probably could have just stuck with the initial size and not cast on any extra stitches in the underarm, but I did, and it's fine. I do plan on making another one, and I'll probably just do the same thing like I did this one because it turned out fine. Cast on for the XS increase in the underarms, so I end up with somewhere between the XS and the S. If I had gone up to the S, I would have had, I think, 12 inches of positive ease, so I was between sizes, and that's just the way I made it work for me to fall in between the two to then end up with the suggested amount of ease. I think this is a pattern that you could do a high-low hem if that is your preference. I'm going to stand on a step stool here, so hopefully you can see the hem a little bit better. I thought the hem flared out a little bit on me, but I fixed that by adding some 0.5 millimeter beading cord, which is similar to elastic thread. However, it's a little bit more structured because it's thicker. So I just threaded that through the right leg of the stitch at the bottom hem. So I didn't make it smaller than the circumference. I did it the same circumference measurement, and that way it just keeps it from flaring out. So instead of the sweater initially kind of flaring out like this, now it just sits better on me and I don't have it flaring out or stretching out in any way. I may or may not do that to the cuffs later. I like them as is right now. I did do it to the cuffs of a different sweater where it's a little more cinched, but I was concerned that with all of my pulling up of the sleeves that it would stretch out. It's in the same yarn. And so that one I did add elastic in the cuffs, and that's worked out great so far. So I may go back and add elastic to this as well, not to necessarily cinch it in, but just to give it a little more stability, a little more structure so that it doesn't stretch out over time. I did add an elastic in the inside of my neckband that is not in the instructions. Again, I didn't want it to stretch out over time. This is a cotton merino yarn, so there's a ton of drape, but also maybe a little less elasticity because of the cotton, and not wanting the neckband to stretch out over time into like a boat neck effect, I just threaded an elastic through this neckband, which essentially acts as a casing because it's a folded over neckband. The way I like to do my neckbands is I'll pick up all along the inside with another needle that's smaller. So the neckband was using a 4 millimeter needle, so I think I might have used like a 3.25 millimeter needle, 16-inch length 3.25 millimeter needle, and picked up all on the inside. So I made sure I had the same number of stitches that were on my ribbing needles. And then I'll fold it in half and then do a 3 needle bind off all the way around using a DPN or double pointed needle that is bigger than the other ones. That way it's a loose bind off, So it's still stretchy, very comfortable, but this way it adds stability being a 3-needle bind off, and I make sure I have a 1-to-1 stitch count all the way around, and then my ribbing doesn't end up slanted or I have to make up any stitches anywhere because I didn't have enough or had too many. So that is my tip for doing a folded neckband. I don't think I have anything else to share about my process and modifications. I did pull out a couple of items to try on with this sweater, so let's do that next. All right, first up, we have these June shorts. I sewed these a couple of summers ago. They have pockets, it's an elastic waistband. I can wear the sweater tucked in the front or not. Very comfortable. I would probably have on like a white tank top or a white t-shirt under this, so the sweater would be perfect for early mornings, late evenings, walks by the lake. I really like this combination. I think it's fun to have the leaf print in the similar color story of blues and the neutral slate blue-gray color, and then the stripes. So this one's a winner. Next up, this is the Orchard dress, a free pattern by Helen's Closet, Canadian company that I love. Their sewing patterns are well written, easy to follow, and I've made several of their patterns and I really like them. Let me stand on a step stool here so maybe you can see it better. The length, of course, is modifiable to whatever you want. It has strappy straps and the front and back are the same. I think the color of this gingham fabric matches the leek green in my sweater. And I think this is also a fun combination. I can definitely imagine wearing this dress on the beach and it's hot out, and then by the time we get into the shade or maybe the wind picks up or it's evening, this sweater would be perfect to throw on over top. I really like this combination. I think this is fun. Okay, on to the next thing. This is a dress I made also a few summers ago. It's made out of a washed linen. It definitely has a texture to it. It's a little bit rough, but it also keeps sweat and heat off the skin, which is excellent for a humid summer. I kind of self-drafted this. It is a boxy-ish top, and then it's super cropped so that the waistline is above my belly button by maybe an inch or two, maybe 1 inch. And then a gathered skirt with inseam pockets. And I wanted to try on the sweater over this one because there are sleeves. I wanted to see if it would feel bunchy or not. So let's give it a try. Because it is linen, it isn't going to be as stiff underneath. So that is a plus. But I think this feels pretty good. I don't feel any extra fabric gathering in the underarm area. It isn't uncomfortable by any means. And I think this could be a good contender as well. Gingham and stripes. I'm here for gingham and stripes. I think that's really fun. So this one is also a winner. One more. All right, here we have the Lawrence dress, a pattern from Helen's Closet. And I have worn this dress a lot since I made it also a couple of summers ago. I don't remember. It is all linen and it's very comfortable. There's tiered gathered skirt, inseam pockets, and I think it's also the perfect color combination with this sweater. I feel like stripes and linen go really well together in the summer, and I am loving this. I feel like everything I pulled out is in the blues, greens, kind of neutrally color palette, and that just really goes with this. So if I was traveling, these pieces could all go together and it would be really easy to mix and match and wear and feel cool in the summer. I think this is really fun. Yeah, I really like it.
I wanted to include one more outfit here. I did wear the sweater out with beige colored jeans and sandals, and these photos are taken next to a lake. In one of them, I'm wading in the lake with my pants rolled up, and I have it paired with a core belt bag, which is a free sewing pattern, and I made that a couple of summers ago, and I think this is a perfect summery outfit for on the go anywhere.
So I think that's everything I wanted to share with you today about the Nantucket Sweater by Haley Smedley of Ozetta. I hope this video cleared up any questions that you may have had about the pattern. Of course, I always refer you to the designer if you have pattern specific questions. And I hope this inspired you to make one for yourself, or maybe you decided that this is not for you, and that is also valuable information. I have some ideas to make one for the fall winter. I think I want to try the Barocco Ultra Alpaca Wool. I have not tried that before. I asked some people in a previous video on their experiences if they've used that yarn before. A lot of people said they really liked it. Some people said that it's a little itchy on the skin and they might not be able to wear it, but somebody else loves it. So yeah, I think I might give it a try. And if I am hesitant to try it in a full sweater, maybe I'll knit it in a vest first, because then it's worn over other clothing, so the itch factor won't really be an issue. We'll see when I get there. There may be a Nantucket Sweater 2.0. With that, cheers to being creative, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!